Today is finally the day the turbo Miata build begins. We're starting this install by removing the factory exhaust manifold. Everything has been soaking in penetrating oil, so the goal here is to get the manifold off without snapping any studs. After fighting it for a bit, we switched to a half-inch ratchet for extra leverage and slowly started cracking the nuts loose one by one. This is one of those jobs that's way easier with multiple people helping, especially when you're working in tight spaces. Next, the front bumper comes off. Removing the bumper gives us a ton of room to work with, and more importantly, space for the intercooler and all of the charge piping that's coming later. While we're here, we test fit the new bumper for the NB Miata, and the difference is huge. It completely changes the look of the car and already makes it feel more aggressive. With the top side cleared, it's time to jack the car up and tackle the exhaust from underneath. The header is fully unbolted at this point, but it's still fighting us, which is pretty much expected on a Miata. To create more room, the intake and throttle body come off, giving us just enough clearance to start working the header out. Even then, it's tight. The steering shaft is right in the way, and we have to carefully maneuver the header through the top to finally get it out. After some wrestling, the factory headers are officially off. This is the last time this car will be naturally aspirated. The stock headers are now removed and will be up for sale, since they won't be needed anymore. Now it's time to move into the turbo parts. The turbo kit uses a cast iron exhaust manifold. It's not a fancy tubular setup, but it's affordable, durable, and perfect for a budget turbo build. Next comes the most important part of the entire setup, the turbocharger itself. Before mounting it, we need to clock the turbo so the compressor and turbine housings are positioned correctly. This allows proper clearance from the frame and makes sure the oil lines and piping will line up later. By loosening the housing bolts, we're able to rotate the turbo until everything clears the chassis. To make room for the charge piping, a small section near the front is modified, allowing the pipe to pass through cleanly without interference. From there, we start mocking up the intercooler piping on the intake side, checking angles, fitment, and overall routing. Nothing gets finalized yet. This stage is all about test fitting and making sure everything works together. We also realized the blow-off valve flange wasn't welded to the piping, so that part needs to be ordered separately before final assembly. A couple days later, progress continues. The intercooler is cleaned up and mounted using custom brackets, which makes a massive difference in fitment and stability. At the same time, we start planning the oil cooler location. The cooler itself looks great, but the lines are a bit long and will need to be trimmed to avoid dragging or rubbing. By the end of this session, a lot more gets done than expected. The turbo is fully mounted and clocked exactly where we want it. Most of the intercooler piping is mocked up, with only a couple of elbows left to install. The intercooler is mounted solid with custom brackets, and the charge pipe routing to the throttle body is almost complete. There's still plenty left to do, but the foundation of the turbo setup is officially in place. This build is far from finished, but the turbo Miata journey has officially begun. With the turbo mounted, the next major focus is the oil system. Since this car is turbocharged now, proper oil routing is critical. We're using an oil filter sandwich plate that mounts between the block and the oil filter. This allows us to run an oil cooler and also gives us a clean oil feed source for the turbo. After trimming a few sections and moving things around, we finally gain some clearance. There's just enough space to route the piping cleanly without it contacting the frame or other components. This is slow work, but progress is progress. With the piping mocked up, the front bumper goes back on temporarily, so we can see how everything fits behind it. This changes the entire look of the car, but more importantly, it gives us reference points for mounting the oil cooler and finalizing the piping layout. The intercooler sits perfectly behind the bumper, and now we can start planning where the oil cooler will live without interfering with airflow or charge pipes. Once the bumper comes back off, we begin marking positions and test fitting the oil cooler. Nothing is permanent yet. Everything is still mock-up stage, so adjustments can be made later. To make fitting easier, a small amount of lubricant is used on the piping so it can rotate and slide during test fitting. This will all be cleaned off before final assembly to prevent boost leaks. Next up is the blow-off valve. A dedicated pipe with a welded flange is used, so the blow-off valve can be mounted properly without needing aluminum welding. This keeps the setup simple and budget-friendly. The exact angle and placement of the valve is still being decided, but the foundation is there. A few days later, we run into the biggest issue so far. To properly return oil from the turbo, the oil pan needs to be removed, so a drain bung can be installed. That means draining the oil, supporting the engine, and preparing to drop the oil pan. Once the oil is drained, the engine and transmission are supported using jacks and wood blocks to keep everything stable. This is not a step you want to rush. With the pan unbolted, it quickly becomes clear that it won't come out easily. The oil pickup tube is blocking removal, and there isn't enough clearance with the subframe in place. At this point, the only option is to partially drop the subframe. By loosening it just enough, we're able to gain the clearance needed without fully removing it. This turns into a careful balancing act, supporting the engine, transmission, and subframe all at once. After a lot of patience and small adjustments, the oil pan finally comes off. This officially clears the way for the turbo oil drain setup. It's one of the messiest and most frustrating parts of the build, but it's also one of the most important. With the oil pan finally off, the next step is getting everything ready for final installation. The first thing that needs to go in is the baffle plate. This installs underneath the oil pan and helps control oil movement, especially now that the car is turbocharged. A new gasket is installed for the pickup tube, and RTV is applied carefully along the mating surfaces. This step matters. Any gaps here can easily turn into oil leaks later. Once the baffle plate is secured, the oil pan gasket is installed, and the pan is prepped with RTV all the way around. Everything is laid out and ready. At this point, there's no going back. Installing the oil pan turns out to be harder than expected. The baffle plate and pan fight each other, and the bolt holes don't want to line up. After some patience and minor adjustments, the pan finally seats properly, and everything tightens down evenly. But before calling it done, there's one critical thing that needs to be checked: clearance. Since a turbo oil drain bung was added to the pan, there's a real concern about how close it is to the rotating assembly inside the engine. To verify this, a bore scope is fed through the drain hole while the crankshaft is slowly rotated by hand. As the crank turns, it becomes immediately clear just how close everything is. The crank passes by the drain hole with only millimeters to spare. As rotation continues, the rods come into view, even closer than expected. This is the moment where everything could have gone very wrong. If the bung had been placed even slightly off, the engine would have needed a new oil pan or major rework. After carefully rotating the engine through multiple cycles, it's confirmed. Nothing makes contact. The closest point is the bottom of the crank, but it clears barely. This was a close call, but it worked. With clearance confirmed, attention turns to engine positioning. The engine mounts are loosened slightly, allowing the engine to be shifted just enough to improve alignment and reduce stress. Once adjusted, everything is tightened back down properly, the subframe is reinstalled, motor mounts are secured, and the suspension and components underneath are fully bolted back into place. After all the frustration, adjustments, and careful checks, the bottom end of the car is finally back together. The oil pan is installed. The drain bung clears. The subframe is back on. This was one of the most stressful parts of the entire turbo build, but it's officially done. In the next part, the build moves forward toward final assembly and startup. We're getting close. With the bottom end back together, attention shifts to the smaller but equally critical components. The oil pressure sensor is replaced with a new unit to ensure accurate readings once the turbo system is fully operational. Next up is the fuel system. With boost comes a massive increase in airflow, which means the fuel system has to keep up. Bigger injectors are already installed, but they're useless without a pump that can supply enough fuel. The stock fuel pump is removed, and while it still works, it's clearly worn after years of use. In its place, a higher flow fuel pump is installed. The new pump is assembled, dropped into the tank, and secured properly. Once the cover goes back on, the fuel system is officially ready to support boost without leaning out under load. Back underneath the car, work continues on exhaust fitment. The downpipe is test-fitted and carefully marked using a straight edge. Clearances are tight. The exhaust needs to snake between the motor mount and coolant lines without contacting anything. Precise cuts and angles here make the difference between a clean install and constant rattles later. With the oil system upgraded, fuel system reinforced, and exhaust layout taking shape, the Turbo Miata is getting dangerously close to being complete. There's still work to do, but at this point, everything is coming together. With most of the major systems in place, it's finally time to step back and look at how far the build has come. The Miata is off the jack stands and sitting on custom cribs, giving full access underneath while keeping the car stable. Even without a fender installed, the car already looks aggressive. The turbocharger is fully mounted and clocked, with the intake side routed cleanly and ready for airflow. A new coupler finishes off the cold side, creating a smooth path for air to move through the system. There's still some planning left for crankcase ventilation, likely a second catch can, but overall, the engine bay is coming together exactly how it should. Inside the car, the transformation is even more obvious. Boost, oil pressure, oil temperature, and AFR gauges are installed in a custom 3D printed mount. These readings are critical on a turbo setup, especially once the car sees boost for the first time. Attention then turns to exhaust fabrication. Using leftover exhaust components from a previous project, the downpipe is built completely from scratch. Nothing bolts on easily. Everything requires cutting, grinding, fitting, and welding. The goal is simple: clear the chassis, clear the steering shaft, and keep everything tucked as tight as possible. Piece by piece, the downpipe starts to take shape. While fabrication continues underneath the car, work moves to the engine bay. The front fender is reinstalled, wiring is secured, and vacuum lines are routed for the blow-off valve. Back at the welding table, the downpipe comes together. What started as scrap exhaust turns into a clean, functional turbo downpipe. Clearances are checked, angles are adjusted, and final welds begin to lock everything into place. A flex pipe is planned for the next step, necessary to allow engine movement and prevent cracked welds once the car is driven. By the end of the day, the progress is undeniable. The turbo system is mounted, the fuel system is upgraded, the exhaust is nearly complete, the blow-off valve is routed. This Miata is no longer just a project, it's on the edge of running. What started as a budget turbo idea is turning into a real functional build.
What's up, guys? After some wrenching, tuning, and just overall just a lot of hard work and dedication over the past few months, the Turbo Miata is finally finished.
After months of wrenching, tuning, and problem-solving, the Turbo Miata is finally finished. What started as an $800 eBay turbo kit turned into a full garage-built setup, a T3/T4 turbo on a BP 4W 1.8, running 640cc injectors, a DeatschWerks 255 fuel pump, and a Mega Squirt ECU. Every part of this car was touched, From dropping the subframe to weld an oil pan bung, to building a double catch can system with a Mazda Speed PCV, to tuning fuel and ignition inside Tuner Studio. Nothing was plug and play. This car is tuned in real time, data logging, adjusting, and learning on the road. At just 6 to 8 pounds of boost, it already pulls hard, stays rich under load, and runs safely. And this isn't the end. The bumper still needs paint. The interior will be restored. A roll bar, seats, and more boost are coming. But today, this Miata runs. It makes boost. And it was built in a garage.